this thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Book your stay and play right now. Golf, the sports book, Philip M's, poker, craps, blackjack. Presented by Pearl River Resort, Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook and Lounge. And don't forget that the Sportsbook and Lounge has a full bar and food. March Madness is here. It'll be next week. SEC basketball tournament this weekend. Play a little golf. Go to the Sportsbook with some buddies. That's a good 24 to 48 hours. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Our SEC Insider Hit this morning with Steve Robertson is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home and save with your Farm Bureau Insurance agent in your town or county, in any of the 82 counties in the state of Mississippi. Can also hit favorites.com. Steve Robertson was at the Frisco Classic all weekend. There was some good and bad. And Friday and Saturday was Meltdown City on Steve's board, genespage.com, among other Twitter, my text messages. And then this morning, people, while yesterday's win was a big win for Lamonas and Mississippi State, people are, you can tell there's a lot of angst and concern within the program. So we welcome in Hail State Insider Steve Robertson on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve, yesterday was a good win. You know, Gartman and Dome and some other things happened. But all in all, you know, it wasn't necessarily a really good weekend in Frisco. How concerned are you right now with where they are?
Well, I'm concerned. I'm not overly concerned, but I'm concerned. And one of the things that I think about, and I considered this before you called this morning, is, you know, each week, you know, State has dropped a game they shouldn't have. You know, we go back to the first week of the season and said, hey, they should sweep VMI. Well, you drop a game. Well, then we talk again and say, okay, it should be a 4-1 week in week 2. Well, then you drop a game to UL Monroe that you shouldn't have. I mean, you know, Arizona State's going to have some dudes. I mean, so it's tough to sweep that series. You get into this week, you're thinking, hey, if they can go 3-1, it kind of rights the ship. They go 2-2. And so it's like each week they're dropping a game that you don't expect them to. And then you look inside the numbers here and you look at some of these young arms, and you know, there's some guys that just aren't ready for prime time. They've got to figure this thing out. I mean, they should be able to get fat this week. I mean, it should be a very manageable schedule. And you head down to Biloxi, then you head to Lexington. But, yeah, I mean, the people are right to be concerned because the expectations for Mississippi State baseball never change.
This team will have to scrap and claw, in my opinion, to be a 2 or 3 seed on the road.
I think that's fair, and I think this team is good enough offensively to get there. The problem is like even against the game against Oklahoma, you know, you go out there and you score 9 runs, and you assume, okay, well, that's a competitive ball game, but it really wasn't. I mean, your State gets beat 15-9, and they were chasing the game in the middle innings and beyond. I mean, you know, State answers early on, you get a lead, and the next thing you know, it's an 8-4 ball game. State puts 3, it's 8-7. You're thinking, okay, if we can get a clean inning here, maybe we could get the lead and hang on here. But State couldn't get the clean inning, and that's been probably the most disappointing thing. Is, you know, just defensively, especially on that left side, you know, you continue to have some issues over there, and you know, you've got young pitching. And you can't give those guys, you know, you can't force them to get 4 and 5 outs an inning and expect to go win ball games. Defense has got to get better. We all know the issues with pitching there. And when State loses a ball game, they really lose a ball game. You look at every game that's been competitive or been close, State's won those games. And more times than not, the common denominator has been timely errors and walks. And if you're going to walk the ballpark, you're not going to beat anybody.
Steve Robertson talking Hail State baseball, a lot of concern. Can they get to the postseason? Long way to go. But Steve just referenced a lot of things that have to kind of line up for them to do that. I mean, can they get and I think this will be a tremendous challenge. Can they go 14-16 in the league? That's usually the cutoff. And not drop many more, maybe 1 or 2 more non-conference games to get a 2 or 3 seed on the road. You know, this thing may not, their rotation, who knows when they'll actually have it, right, Steve? I mean, it could be 3 weeks from now.
I think it'll be settled by the time you get to Kentucky. Yeah, I don't think Cade Smith is far back. I mean, I think he's back sooner rather than later. And you need Cade Smith to be really good. You don't need Cade Smith to be average. And obviously he had some soreness and some tenderness in week 2. And Cade Smith's a strike thrower. And even when he is on his game or just sort of on his game, this is the guy that gets ahead of 1. And didn't do that at all against Arizona State, so they give him some time off. And, we expect him back, again, sooner rather than later. Eintema is a guy that's just kind of hit or miss. I didn't think he was good at all on Saturday. He got through the first inning, fairly easily, and then gives up a 3-run bomb and recovers and kind of gets out of that inning. You think, okay, well, that's baseball. Things are going to happen when you challenge hitters. In that third inning, it was a complete meltdown. And the state is just having to be so reliant on newcomers on pitching. That's the thing. I go back to one of our earlier conversations this season is, how does Mississippi State baseball get into a situation where you don't have 1 or 2 established weekend starters, and they're not there? And that's really the rub of the whole thing is, with the offense this team has, if you had quality pitching on the front line, you'd feel a lot better about the season. And then you guys like Nate Dome step up, and you begin to wonder, okay, what's his role? Does he need to go into a starting role? Is he better in the back end? Look, as you look at Gartman, who wasn't sharp yesterday, but has been State's most consistent guy this year. Gartman gets you through 4, and then Dome closes the door. Is that the recipe for success? I guess that's something they're still figuring out.
There seems like too many if this happens, then this happens for this team. I know there's still a long way to go. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. What do you think if you had to bet $100? You think Dome goes to a starting role sooner than later?
I don't think initially, but I think if things continue the way they are, of course, as you mentioned, there's a lot of if-then scenarios, and you want to have all that cleared up before you get into SEC play. That's why I think this week is so important. I mean, you get Valparaiso coming in on Tuesday. You get Lipscomb coming in for the weekend. You can do no worse than 3-1 this week, and you need to go 4-0. I mean, you got to start making up some ground on some of these games that you lost you shouldn't have. And Lipscomb took 2 out of 3 from Notre Dame earlier this year, but then they got swept by Auburn, and you kind of wonder, who is this team? But Mississippi State can't take anybody for granted. They have to focus on the next game, the next opponent, and go out there and try to win today's game. And so, Tuesday will be interesting just because you're back home, but I'm eager to see what they do down in Biloxi. Against UL Lafayette and Nicholls State, and I know that the fans down there always pack it in. I'm glad they go play that game, but those games take on added importance. State needs to put together a nice winning streak and have some juice heading into Lexington.
All right, so what's the latest on Aaron Nixon and Pico Khan and some of the other guys?
Well, they both travel with the team. I had a chance to see both of those guys, over the weekend. Saw them both getting on the bus yesterday. And, of course, Cade Smith unavailable this weekend. Cade's out there, happy, doing well. And Nixon was in uniform yesterday, and I'm told that, if they had to have him, they could have had him, but they're trying to give him a little more time. And, you don't really know the nature of these things because, the Monos and Fox all just don't talk about them. They're going to protect those kids. But that's the thing that kind of gives you a little bit of hope. You start thinking, okay, Pico was a proven commodity last year, even as a freshman. You get him and get Nixon and Smith. You start getting some guys back, and all of a sudden, the workload is not shifted more towards these younger guys quite as much. And you start thinking, okay, if we can get these guys back, things will begin to settle on the mound. And that's really the hope for State. So it's not like, okay, you're just going to keep playing with the guys you're playing with. There is some help out there. It's just a matter of getting those guys healthy.
All right. But you agree that they're playing for a road regional and probably best case scenario is a number 2 seed on the road.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I mean, barring something unforeseen. I mean, obviously, somebody gets hot and emerges out of nowhere. I mean, I think about last year, like Dylan DeLucia. At Ole Miss down the stretch, there was not a better pitcher in the country. I mean, let's be honest about it. That guy was hot as he could possibly be. What took some time for him to kind of find that? And, you hope that there's somebody like that can step up for State. But, Yeah, I agree with you. I think State at best is expected, or maybe pushing towards a 2 seed somewhere. It may end up being a 3 seed somewhere, but I think if you're Mississippi State, you're thinking, hey, just get me in a tournament. Hopefully we're playing our best baseball at the end of the year, and perhaps we can surprise somebody. But I think anything beyond that is probably a little bit foolhardy right now.
What if they don't even make the SEC tournament?
That would be an absolute nightmare scenario. And I think it would lead to Lamonis having to basically gut the staff and make some changes. And I don't think anybody could begrudge him that. I mean, at the end of the day, this is Mississippi State baseball. It's never a year where people are apathetic. I mean, it's just never a situation where people are like, oh, we had a big year last year. It's okay to rebuild this year. Last year, as terrible as it was with all these injuries, fans are just very unforgiving. You won the national championship in 2021. Then you don't even make any of the postseason in 2022. People will offer you a little bit of grace for a year, but that's not really the case. You can't start stacking mediocre or bad years to start. Well, it didn't work out well.
Steve Robertson, 247 Sports, the Boneyard Podcast on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. If they don't go 4-0 this week, where will you sit with them going down to Biloxi and then Lexington?
Well, I think, you have to go 3-1 for sure. You have to. I mean, anything happens on a weekend. I mean, sometimes you run into a hot pitch or whatever, but you'd love to go 4-0 just because you start making up some ground on some of that stuff. But, I think, when you look at the next 2 weeks, the next, 10 games or so, State's got a chance to kind of right the ship a little bit. And I think their problems are really all internal. I don't think Oklahoma is the only team I look at and say, hey, this team beat Mississippi State. I mean, because they get 18, 19 hits. I mean, so it's like Friday night, State's nibbling a little bit. So you walk the ballpark, and Saturday you go challenge hitters and they hit you all over the yard. And Oklahoma, despite their losses, that's a great program. And let's just go ahead and set it for what it is. Right. But what's your identity, right? I mean, you got to go out there and pound the zone, and they did more of that on Sunday. The difference is you don't have a guy that's got, Nate Dohm's velocity and his ability to throw that slider for a swing and miss. But, this week, State could do no worse than 3-1. But, listen, 4-0, it wouldn't right the ship, but people would feel a whole lot better about heading into next week. And then all of a sudden you take those 2 games in Biloxi and you put together, a 6-7 game winning streak. You feel like, hey, we're starting to figure some things out.
I like the staff, and I think they're talented, but I never thought that Lamonis and the staff would be in this predicament.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, and I like the staff too, but, I like winning more, and I think that's where a lot of people feel. It's like, hey, we're very grateful and we're very loyal, but at the end of the day, our loyalty is to a program, not to an individual,
Sure.
And the reality of it is that I have not lost faith in Coach Chris Lamonis, but, it's one of those things that concerns me is the fact that we don't have a frontline starter on the weekend. Does that fall to Fox? Ultimately he's a pitching coach, and so it's his responsibility to make sure you've got quality arms to run out there each and every time. And sometimes that's a process, and people forget. I mean, even back in 2020, I mean, it took State a couple of weekends to kind of sell a rotation. Will Bednar didn't really emerge until he went and played Long Beach State. And so there's still some time to figure some things out, but State's running out of that time as SEC play is now approaching.
And it felt like 5 minutes ago, Gautreaux was the hottest assistant in the country. You think if things unravel that Foxhall will get let go and Gautreaux has a chance to stay one more year?
I don't rule anything out, but I don't think Gautreaux is, and the hitting is really the issue. I mean, of course, there's games. Nobody stays hot all the time, but when you look at the offensive potential of this lineup and what they've done so far, I mean, it's just it's a rarity that the offense doesn't come through. I mean, you saw it Tuesday night against Southern Miss. I mean, it's like. You can keep them down for a couple innings, but at some point they're going to get you, and that's what happens. And especially a team like this, it's patient and willing to let you walk them, and then all of a sudden you get the big hit. And Colton Ledbetter had a tough weekend out here in Frisco.
He did.
He came up with the bases loaded 4 times, and all he got was an RBI sac fly to show for it, and that was a really, really shallow ball. They just happen to take a chance and the throw goes up the line there. But we know that Colton Ledbetter is a proven commodity, and he's going to bounce back. And now that teams have seen film on him, they're going to pitch him different. They're going to attack him differently. And listen, this is not, Sanford. This is the SEC, and you're going to have some of the best minds in all of college baseball trying to exploit your weaknesses. So he's going to have to adjust. Baseball is a game of adjustments. But I've got a lot of confidence in Jake. And, listen, I think Scott Foxall, people forget, just 2 years ago, he was a national assistant of the year. And so this is a guy that didn't forget how to coach. It's just about getting these guys to grow up and finding a role for them that helps Mississippi State win some ball games.
All right, we'll switch gears. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Must win Thursday, Mississippi State, Florida in Nashville?
I don't think there's any question. Now, again, the Vanderbilt game, we all kind of saw what's happened in Nashville over the course of last month. Jerry Stackhouse got those guys playing exceptionally well. And even without Liam Robbins, this team is very good. State had their opportunities, but it felt like State was chasing them the entire second half. But that's behind you now. So now you got to go play a Florida team that you should have defeated in the regular season. And so maybe there's a chance for some redemption. But I think State is on the bubble today. I think most people would agree. You win that game against Florida, I think you're in. You lose that game, I think you leave it in the hands of the committee, and you may end up in the NIT. But the fact that State is still playing meaningful basketball at this point in the season is a testament to Chris Jan's staff and team. And I don't know that many people expected State to still be in the conversation this late in the year, but here we are. And I think, as you mentioned, I think it's probably a play-in game for State. You win that game, you're in the tournament.
Because if you win, you pull Bama, right? Didn't I see that earlier? So
that's correct.
Yeesh.
Yeah, you win, you pull Bama. Yeah, and you know what? And State's been competitive in those games and probably should have won in Tuscaloosa. And now you get round 3 on a neutral floor, and even if it's a quad 1 loss, I think it helps your resume.
Mm-hmm. Emmanuel Forbes, 4.35 40. He burned it up at the combine. Some questions on his weight, but he's definitely going pretty early second. He may find himself going in the first round.
You know what's interesting about that? It's way back in fall practice. I had a scout from an NFC team that told me that they're going to be picking late, and if he's there and he runs well at the combine, they're going to take him. So we'll see how things go there. And people worry about, he's 166 pounds. I mean, goodness gracious, this is a guy who's been getting ready for the combine and thinking about his 40. You and I both know he's trying to run as fast as he can. They can put 10, 15 pounds on him without much trouble. That's just as simple as it is. I'm not worried about his playing weight. What he played at State, 175 most of the time. And this is the most brutal conference in college football. And so I'm not worried about that. He's proven that he can run. He's got great length. He's proven that he can cover. He can play off man. He can play press. Not the least bit worried about that. And the fact that he'll get into a NFL strength and conditioning program and put on 15 pounds of mass without hurting his foot speed, his dexterity, this guy's a potential first rounder, and he deserves every bit of that.
All right. Zach Selman, first-year athletic director. I would think that he's already well aware of the passion within the Mississippi State fan base for baseball.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. And again, he's coming from Oklahoma. They're a team too that's very passionate about baseball. They don't pack in the numbers like we do at Duty Double Field, but Zach's well aware of what he's got his arms around. And he was out in Frisco. Matter of fact, I visited with him a little while in the box, hanging with Dak Prescott and Rafael Palmeiro. So he's rubbing shoulders with people that understand the Mississippi State experience. And I don't think Zach needs a book or any guidance or anything like that to understand how important college baseball is to Mississippi State people.
Do you think that Pico Khan can pitch in the next week or so?
I think so. Of course, nobody's going to make any official declarations about that. But, I was told 2 weeks ago he was probably a week to 10 days out. And so we're past that now. And, again, he did make the trip with the team. He was in uniform this weekend. I don't know if he was available, but I suspect when we get into SEC play, he'll be ready to go. Of course, you'd like to see his first innings probably coming in non-conference. So maybe you see him in Biloxi.
All right. We'll leave it there. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, the Boneyard Podcast. I think it's close to DEFCON 1 in Starkville. If you look at the reaction on our text line today and the last week or so as far as baseball. And as Steve said, we'll see if they can get it going. A 4-0 week would really put Lamonas and the crew with some momentum going to Biloxi, but they're a long way from that. Steve, we appreciate it. We'll do it again soon.
See ya.
Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Don't forget that we're looking for a couple of sports interns to hang out with us. Yes, you have to work. Unfortunately, you have to work with Blake. But, if you want to learn a little bit about sports marketing, sports talk radio, podcasting, all that, we've had some, great interns come through over the last 15-plus years. And just hit us up on the text line if you may be interested, or male or female. 601-885-3776 is the text line. Also, I forgot to give this out earlier. The Patron party line is 601-707-3750. I've had more people come up to me, females, because we had a few up here that night about how much they enjoyed sipping on really, really, really premium 100% blue agave tequila like Patron Reposado, Patron Añejo, and Patron Extra Añejo, which is really cool. If you're going to drink premium tequila, you want it to be 100% blue agave, not with, additives and so on. Blake?
Yes, sir.
How would you describe it? DEFCON 1 through 5, 1 being the worst. At Mississippi State with baseball right now.
Fans are probably at a higher level of panic than the program is, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not quite as the sky is falling as maybe fans feel like it is.
Agree.
I do think with Steve Robertson, as he said, you just keep coming back to how is there no headlined guy? It would make sense if you had a Hunter, like, I don't know, what James Smith, you get a transfer, and he's going to be good, and then he tears his elbow in week 2 or 3.
Right.
It's like, okay, you went out, you got somebody, you thought you had him, and then an injury happens. Hunter Elliott, Landon Sims, it happens.
Right.
You didn't have that happen. You just don't have a guy. And that's probably the most indicted, or the biggest indictment of what's going on in Starkville right now.
Yeah.
Is how did you not, either through recruiting the last 3 seasons or JUCO/transfer recruiting the last 2 seasons, not go get someone that's at least a low-end Friday night ace?
Fair enough. So where are you? DEFCON
3, I guess. 2.5. I'm right in the middle.
Okay.
It's not quite panic. Everything, they can get a 2 seed and do everything they want to do. That's all still in front of you. You don't go 4-0 or 3-0. Really, you don't go 4-0 this weekend. Then starts getting even more real.
Okay. And then they go back on the road next week to Biloxi for 2 games. And then they go to Lexington, Kentucky for 3. All right. The Out of Bounds show is brought to you by the #1 commercial and industrial roofing company in the state of Mississippi, and that is Independent Roofing Systems. Roofing.ms. Ross Dellinger at 9:30 today.